Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Tentacom video we're going to be discussing cross-platform gaming between the PC and the Xbox One. So just today there has been rumours swirling around that the Xbox One may well receive a keyboard and mouse type of support. And so with the Windows 8 feature set, with cloud support, with Windows Azure, much more besides, especially with keyboard and mouse support, will we be seeing situations where console gamers and PC gamers could play together? Well, this was asked of Phil Spencer, and he was conducting an interview, of course, and he replied, and I quote, "I'm not allowed to leak things," he smiled, "but I think what you're talking about makes a lot of sense. Now you have differences in Windows gaming and console gaming around control and input. In fact, if you go to Shadowrun Xbox 360, something I worked on, we had PC players playing against Xbox 360 customers. We didn't have tremendous success with that, but we learned a lot from it. And then earlier, we released Skull of the Shogun, which was a game we launched on all three platforms on the same day. And you could have start on one platform and save the game to the cloud, and then play across any of the screens and progress. Then, Halo Spartan Assault has some links between Halo 4 and Spartan Assault, even though they are very different games. The connected ecosystems across all of the different services is definitely where I think the future of gaming is going. You don't have to do it as a developer, but you have the capability, and I think the system like Xbox Live across all of those screens where you know who someone is and who their friends are, what their achievements are, and their progress is really critical to that." End quote. So what are my thoughts on this? Because, well, it's an interesting comment. There are a number of issues, of course, with cross-platform gaming. The first is a pretty simple one: keyboard and mouse. FPS titles, you're just not going to do well against someone who is playing with keyboard and mouse if you are on a controller. This is for FPS and also for other titles such as RTS games. Some games are just better on keyboard and mouse. Other games, like fighting for example, are just much better on controller. Now, another issue as well, which is possible, and that's to do with performance. With the PC, for example, we could have 60 frames per second in any titles. Obviously, this depends upon the game. Some games are artificially limited to 30, mostly due to lazy porting, if I'm honest, although this is becoming less of a problem now. But for a while, there were quite a few games that were locked at 30, and there were actually mods or workarounds that you could actually implement to get you above the 30 to the magical happy land of 60. So that's another probable one. There are a number of other issues as well. One of them, although it obviously would not support, would not affect certain games, like for example Call of Duty, but other games really do push the user modding experience. In other words, you create a level, or a weapon, or an environment, or a character, and then you publish that. And it's a lot easier to do that with PC because you can modify the various files. So, that could be another barrier to entry. I think, however, for certain games like the Call of Duties, it could definitely work. For the Battlefields, it could definitely work. Frame rate obviously isn't a massive big deal in terms of, it's not like you can't play with someone who has a different frame rate to you. It's not like they're going to run slower or something, but it gives you an advantage. In other words, you will have a smoother frame rate, so theoretically you may have a better experience. It doesn't necessarily hold true, of course. If you are better than that person, most likely a slightly smoother gameplay experience isn't going to make much of a difference. There are tons of other different nuances that we could go into as well. I suppose it really depends on just how much developers want to push this. We are starting to get into a more open-ended bundle of joy, where developers want their games to be easily accessible over multiple systems. The cloud could definitely do that, and cloud service could definitely facilitate that. It would, however, mean that there would have to be a lot of parity between the two versions. In other words, updates would have to be rolled out exactly at the same time, because obviously you couldn't have a game on, say, version 1.1 on one system and 1.2 on another system, because there would be issues, for example, with the levels. So that would be another thing to consider as well. Personally, I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that. I kind of like the separation. I kind of like the idea of, look, if I'm playing on console, great. If I'm playing on PC, great. On the other hand, there's also a lot of other uncomfortable grounds that we are going to start having to uncover. Because, for example, let's assume the keyboard and mouse support does come about. What happens then? Are they going to start having separate servers for those of us on pad and those of us on keyboard and mouse? Or are we all going to be thrown in? I don't really think that's going to be a good idea, personally. I mean, could you imagine just how much of an advantage you would probably have? There's a reason that, pro PC gamers do not use joypads while they're in like FPS tournaments. It's just not going to really go too well for you. Anyway, it's fair to say that it has a lot of possibilities. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to have situations where games are more, let's say, smooth. So in other words, you may be able to buy the game once and be able to play it on the PC or play it on the Xbox One or whatever, because you've paid that initial price. And that would be kind of nice. In other words, it keeps your save progress and whatever else. Although at the same time, the problem with this level of freedom is there are, generally speaking, always some concessions to be made. So I guess we'll just have to see. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.